Hey everyone, welcome back to my Anthropology Journal podcast. Okay, so this week's theme was disability through a medical anthropological lens. Basically, how medicine, culture, and power decide what counts as normal or healthy. We looked at how disability isn't just about physical or mental impairments, it's about the systems that label people as impaired in the first place. Anthropologists like Margaret Locke and Raina Rapp showed at how biology and culture are always intertwined. For example, what's considered a defect in one society might be seen as a spiritual gift in another. The medical model of disability tends to treat it as an individual problem, something inside the person that needs to be cured or fixed. The social model, on the other hand, says the real issue is how society is built: inaccessible spaces, unfair laws, and biased ideas about what a normal body can do. We also looked at how this plays out globally, like how Western biomedicine sometimes clashes with indigenous or local understandings of health, and how global health programs can unintentionally reinforce inequalities by treating disabled bodies as problems to manage instead of people to include. What really stuck with me this week was how medicine itself can shape identity. For example, when someone gets a diagnosis, autism, chronic pain, depression, it can feel like getting a new social label. That label can bring access to care and community, but it can also bring stigma and control. In anthropology, this is called medicalization. When everyday differences or struggles become defined through medical language, it's not always bad. It can help people get treatment or validation, but it also turns certain kinds of suffering into disorders, shifting attention from society's failures to the individual's biology. Let's take an example: deafness. In many Western medical systems, it's treated as a disability to be corrected, something to fix through hearing aids or cochlear implants. But in deaf culture, especially among people who use sign language, it's not a defect. It's an identity, a community, a way of being. So, whose definition counts? The doctors or the communities. Oh, I also learned about how access to care isn't just about having hospitals, it's about trust, language, and power. In some parts of the world, disabled people are still excluded from public life, not because their condition is fatal, but because health systems were never designed with them in mind. Wheelchair ramps, interpreters, adaptive tech, those are social choices, not biological ones. There's also the global side of this. The way humanitarian and development programs often frame disability as something tragic to be overcome. You've probably seen charity ads that show a kid in a wheelchair and say things like, "For just $1 a day, you can help." That framing makes the donor feel powerful, but does little to challenge the system that made access unequal in the first place. When I was reading about this, I came across the term oblism, the idea that society is organized around the assumption of able-bodiedness. That's not just ramps and elevators, it's the idea that productivity equals worth. In medicine, that's reflected in how treatments are prioritized. For instance, how we invest more in restoring function than in improving quality of life. And it's not only physical disabilities, mental health, chronic illness, and neurodiversity are part of this conversation too. The rise of psychiatric labels shows how much power medicine has to define what's normal thinking. One interesting thing to look at is how depression and anxiety are understood differently depending on culture. In North America, it's individual and chemical. In East Asia, it's social and moral. The same symptoms, two totally different meanings. That reminded me of how easily medicine crosses into morality. Who deserves care, who gets empathy, and who's seen as a burden. Once you start seeing it that way, you realize medicine isn't neutral. It reflects the values of the society that built it. So, what I take away from all this is that disability isn't a tragedy, inequality is. Anthropology pushes us to ask not what's wrong with the person, but what's wrong with the world around them. And that matters for the future. If we're going to keep advancing medicine with AI diagnostics, genetic editing, or prosthetic tech, we have to make sure it doesn't recreate old hierarchies under new names. To me, this week felt like zooming out from medicine as science to medicine as culture, a mirror that shows how we treat difference. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening.